What's up everybody, it's Kat, and one thing that I firmly believe is that controversy is very prominent in our daily speech and our daily communication and just in society in general. And there are honestly sometimes when I think that controversy rules the world. Everything that goes with controversy, opinions, the sides, the money making, the t-shirts, everything that goes with it, it runs the world. And is definitely the topic of much of our news. But what I really want to talk about is that sometimes there are controversies or controversial things inside of controversial things, if that makes any sense. And I'm going to be talking about the trans community because there are some specific terms that are definitely not necessarily argued over but debated over whether or not it should be used and who's okay with it and just how to go about that. So warning, I'm going to be mentioning these terms. If you don't want to hear me mention them or just want to see what they are first, they will be listed in the description box below just so you can check those out. And along with these terms are going to be my opinions about them and my opinions on why I think they are controversial. Without further ado, here are 5 controversial terms in the trans community. Female to male, or FTM. If you don't know what this means, it's a term that is associated with someone that was assigned female at birth but now identifies as male. And the controversy isn't necessarily whether or not this term should be used, it is whether or not you should use it to define a group rather than a single person, because some people, some trans guys don't like the term FTM. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that they were once female or had female genitalia or just like a female body because it causes them dysphoria. But other trans guys like me don't find that offensive or triggering or dysphoric. I don't get dysphoria from that term. I openly identify as FTM, and really it just comes down to asking that person what they like to identify as. If they say I identify as a trans guy, call them a trans guy. If they say they identify as a guy, call them a guy. If they say they're cool being identifying as FTM, then feel free to use FTM. But check with the person you're talking about first, because some people aren't necessarily cool about that term. The next term is MTF, or male to female. The controversy around this term is very similar to female to male, or FTM, in that some people might not want to identify as that because they don't want to acknowledge their past, or it causes them dysphoria. So once again, just ask them what they like to identify as and be respectful of that, because if you identify as a guy, you wouldn't want anyone going around calling you a woman or anything. Just be respectful to that. And now we get to the more grammatical area, and the first one is a transgender. That is a space transgender. And personally, I don't like this term. I personally think it singles me out. And transgender, I just don't believe it should be used as a noun, because I don't want transgender to be the only thing about me. I'm also a filmmaker, I'm also a writer, I'm also a lot of things, but I don't want transgender to be the only thing about me. I believe that transgender should be used as an adjective, so that's my view on it. I don't personally like being called a transgender. The next one is transgenders, with an S, meaning plural. This is very similar to the phrase a transgender in that I believe it singles out a single characteristic or tiny thing about a person, and that's all you care about that person. And some people might say, well, we refer to gay people as the gays sometimes, and I think that really comes down to their community. I haven't necessarily seen any opinions regarding the term gays as in plural. They don't seem to have any offense to it, but transgender people do, and I've seen that commonly. So just, be respectful of that. And the last one is transgendered, with an ED on the end. This, I hate. I don't like this one because with the ED on the end, for one thing, it's making it like a verb, like you transgendered. You can transition, I transitioned, you can totally transition, but you cannot transgender. Transgender is not a verb, it is not a noun, it is an adjective, at least in my opinion. And there's just this thing about adding the ED on the end and pretty much inferring that you were once something other than transgender. And I think this really comes down to the point of, do you choose to be transgender or are you born that way? And with the ED on the end, it's suggesting that at one time you were not and you chose to be transgender, that you were not always transgender. Guys, there is a difference between choosing to identify and choosing to be. Okay? I chose to openly identify as transgender. I did not choose to be transgender. You got it? Okay, we're on the same page now. Happy thoughts. Love. Okay, and that's my interpretation of that word and why it is controversial. So all in all, with the first two terms, ask what the person likes to identify as. If they don't like to identify as MTF or FTM, then ask what they do identify as and respect that choice. With the last three terms, what I've seen is a lot of the trans community takes offense and can be dysphoric around those terms and triggered by those terms. So I just suggest as a whole to avoid those terms at all costs, because even if you're personally okay with it, someone else might not, and it's another respect thing, and that's something in the world that we all need to learn how to do, is to be definitely more respectful to one another. And this is just a tiny little way you can be respectful to the trans community. You might not necessarily get praise for it, because you shouldn't get praise for something you should already be doing, but people will definitely see the difference between you and someone else, and they will notice and acknowledge that difference, that you are making an attempt or are being respectful. And that can go a long way for a person. And that's really all I had to say. So I'll see you soon. Goodbye. I cannot say that frickin' word.